Good afternoon, and welcome to the Women in the Law event hosted by South Texas College of Law Alumni Association. I'm Samantha Torres, the chair of the Events and Programs Committee, and I, along with my committee members, would like to thank you for attending and tuning in to today's presentation. First, I want to thank my fellow committee members for putting thoughtful effort into this event. This is the first Women in the Law panel that we've hosted, and we're featuring women from across generations. So thank you for helping me with this event. I also want to thank our co-sponsors, South Texas Career Resources, the Women's Law Society, and the Benny Agosto Jr. Diversity Center. With the school centennial celebration approaching in 2023, we wanted to do something where we could highlight some of our most influential alumni, particularly women. And today we feature a generation of women who are the most influential and impressive South Texas alumni. From 5 women registered in South Texas's first year to 55% of the 1L class being female, we knew it was important to highlight what we've accomplished over these 100 years. Today, we also have 2 co-moderators, one who I'm sure many of you are very familiar with, Professor Elaine Carlson, class of 1978, and Brittny Mandarino Curry, class of 2020, who will lead this conversation. Professor Carlson is the Stanley J. Krist Distinguished Professor of Law, where she teaches Texas pretrial procedure, Texas trial and appellate procedure, and litigation-related seminars here at South Texas. She's co-authored Texas civil procedure books and numerous law review and CLE articles on procedural issues. Among her many awards, most pertinent today, in 2008, she received the Texas Lawyer Extraordinary Women in Texas Law Award and was honored as Alumni of the Year. Brittny is an assistant public defender in the juvenile division at the Harris County Public Defender's Office, where she represents justice-involved youth in special education, school discipline, and educational access matters. She also commits her time to nonprofit work and is currently the president-elect of Houston Young Lawyers Association. And so with that, I will turn it over to our wonderful co-moderators, Professor Carlson and Brittny.
Welcome, everyone. I have the pleasure to introduce our 5 panelists today. I will read their brief bios, and we encourage you to follow up to follow these phenomenal women. The Honorable Kim Ogg, class of 1987, began her career in criminal law in 1987 in Harris County. While serving as chief felony prosecutor, she was appointed to Houston's first anti-gang task force, and under her leadership, she worked to decrease gang crimes, preparing for her next role as executive director of Crime Stoppers of Houston. Kim later, D.A. Ogg, my apologies, later entered private practice as managing partner of the Ogg Law Firm, and in 2016 was elected as Harris County District Attorney on a platform of criminal justice reform, and she has worked to advance bail reform and to diversify the leadership in her office. Welcome, D.A. Ogg. Justice Eva Guzman, class of 1989, is the first Latina to serve on the Texas Supreme Court and the first to hold statewide office. Before serving on Texas's highest civil court, Justice Guzman was a justice on the Texas 14th Court of Appeals and a Harris County District Court judge. Throughout her career, she has ruled on thousands of civil and criminal cases and has also authored hundreds of judicial opinions. Justice Guzman now serves as a partner at Wright, Close & Barger, LLP, in their appellate practice here in Houston. Welcome, Justice Guzman. The Honorable Theresa Chang, class of 1996, is an attorney and special commissioner of eminent domain administrative hearings in Houston. Prior to this role, she served as judge on the Harris County Civil Courts and as a City of Houston Municipal Court judge. She's also served in her career as the division chief during her time at the Harris County District Attorney's Office. Judge Chang has also served on the Commission for Lawyer Discipline of the State Bar of Texas, as well as the Board of Directors of the Asian American Bar Association. Welcome, Judge Chang.
Thank you.
Regina Bynote Jones, class of 1999, is the Chief Legal Officer of Baker Hughes, a global energy technology company headquartered here in Houston, Texas. Throughout her career, Regina has held global roles in complex legal environments, including assignments based in Europe, Southeast Asia, and across the United States. She also has demonstrated commitment to global and local stewardship and has previously served on the board of directors of the Houston March of Dimes, the board of the Girl Scouts San Jacinto Council, Child Advocates, as well as a board member of the State Bar of Texas. Welcome, Regina.
Thank you.
Jackie Barger, class of 2012, began her career as a plaintiff's personal injury attorney and has transitioned to civil litigation defense in 2013, where she has represented clients in personal injury, construction defect, and product defect claims across Texas in state and federal court. During her time at South Texas, Jackie was a managing editor of the Corporate Counsel Review and a winning competitor in the South Texas Advocacy Program. Jackie donates her time to the Junior League of Houston and is very passionate about volunteer and service in her community. Welcome, Jackie. Thank you. And I will pass it to my co-moderator, Professor Carlson, to kick us off.
Okay. We have a lot of alum and students, and we're going YouTube, and we wanted to know if you could each briefly share with your experiences on what makes South Texas special. And if you could go anywhere to learn the law, why did you come to South Texas? So let's start with you, Judge Chang.
I am always grateful for South Texas College of Law because without South Texas, I would not have such rewarding legal career. The reason I want to go to South Texas because it has very good moot court program, even though at that time I was a chemical engineer, so I want to have a law degree on the side, so I was a part-time student. So I work in the morning and come to school at night, even though I did not have time to go to moot court. But that was one of the reasons why I want to come to South Texas. And at that time, South Texas has the best part-time program in city of Houston, and that's why I want to be in. So it's the best school.
Thank you. Jackie?
Well, I knew I wanted to be a trial lawyer, and South Texas College of Law had the reputation of being a school that prepared their students to be trial lawyers. I was a part of the advocacy program, which is another reason why I decided to come to South Texas, and it definitely prepared me for the career I have today.
Wonderful.
And for me, South Texas College of Law, Houston, it reflects an extraordinary commitment to their students. And I knew that I wanted to be at a place as a first-generation Latina attending law school. I wanted to be at a law school where I knew that there was a commitment to the success of each and every student. That's the way it was when I was here, and that's the way it still is. And I think that's what sets us apart as an alumni community, is that we can all share a story. I was just talking to Professor Carlson. We all have a story to tell about how this law school transformed the trajectory of our lives. I would not have been the places I've been but for South Texas College of Law, Houston.
Thank you, Justice.
Excellent. It's interesting to ask the question. So I started off always wanting to be a lawyer. And when I was an undergrad, my business law professor told a story. He was a South Texas law grad, and he talked about how it was an amazing law school. And he talked about the moot court program and how we beat out all of the major schools, and just talked about how it was the most amazing education. And he was so grateful that he had had the opportunity to attend South Texas. When I graduated, I went to work full-time in information technology. And during that experience, I realized that I still wanted to be a lawyer. So I wanted to go to law school at night, and it was perfect. what South Texas was able to offer me, which was the benefit of an amazing education, amazing legal education, the benefit of being able to still engage in my career while going to school at night, and the opportunity to deal with students that were in all walks and stages of their own lives. I remember one of my colleagues was a student. He was a pilot with Continental Airlines at the time, and his daughter was also a law student at times. So there, you got a lot of motivation just from the collegiality of the school, as well as the teachers and the professors and the engagement with others in the community.
You know, I'm going to interrupt there, Regina. I had a student who was a plastic surgeon. And all during class, he would kind of focus, and I thought, I wonder if he's remaking my face. So you're right, we do have all.
Yeah, you do.
District Attorney.
I had a journalism degree, and I had thought I had wanted to be a writer, but I was a slow writer. Work was tough. It was the early 80s, and my father had attended South Texas College of Law. He often promoted that our school had real judges and real practicing attorneys, and that it was not a school of theory, it was a school about how to be successful in working as a lawyer. And that interested me. I thought it would be a better way for me to learn, to be able to do and learn from people who had done, rather than just learn in theory. And because South Texas had a night program and allowed working students to attend, I needed to work during school, and I also needed to graduate as quickly as possible. And so I did both. I worked and went to school full time. And I found the education to be so practical that when I was on the Alumni Association, our motto from the Alumni Board was that we turned out the most practice-ready lawyers in the country. And that has been my experience as an employee and as an employer. As an employee of the Harris County DA's office, my first job out of law school, I was in trial my second day. Boy, did mock trial come in handy. And, you know, at the district attorney's office, to employ a lot of people, it's good to have been an employee who needed work and that kind of thing, and needed a skill that could be readily usable in the market. And that's why I love South Texas. It gave me my shot, too.
Thank you.
I would like to pass this next question to Regina. What was the greatest challenge that you faced as a young lawyer entering the legal field, and how did you persevere and overcome it?
The greatest challenge, because there's so many. I think, if I'm completely honest, I've always been my greatest challenge. Trying to decide what to do. So I'm a very non-traditional lawyer, if you will. I've never practiced in a law firm. And so the traditional path, to me, has always been stated as this is the way you do it. You start off here, you graduate in the top 10%, you go and work for a top firm as a summer clerk, and then you go and work now as a full-time associate, and then you end up as a partner. None of that happened for me. When I graduated, I was in technology. I liked my job, but I still wanted to be a lawyer. And I ended up getting opportunities because people actually saw potential in me. And it just happened that I ended up being trained, quite frankly, by some of the smartest lawyers in the world. Why? Because they were partners with many of the law firms that we worked with as a client. So my career was very non-traditional, but I think the biggest challenges was figuring myself out as I went, because I had no plan. And as a result, I ended up just kind of finding my way. And I would say the biggest part of that was recognizing that I wasn't going to show up with credentials. So I had to show up being able to demonstrate that I could add value irrespective of the fact that I wasn't in the top 10% of my class. I didn't work with a law firm. I wasn't an associate, nor was I a partner, et cetera, but I figured it out.
I appreciate that. And Jackie, if you could share a bit about your experience being one of our most recent graduates, how was that journey for you integrating into the practice of law?
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest challenge I had in integrating into the practice of law was battling imposter syndrome. And even as I sit here today, I'm wondering, I shouldn't be sitting with these incredible women. What have I done in 10 years? So I think that was the biggest thing, and just building my confidence in myself and being around others that had confidence in me. Obviously, they saw something in me. So that helped me build confidence as well, and just being given opportunities for learning and growth and finding good mentors. That is definitely what helped me navigate my first years as a lawyer, and even still now, being 10 years out.
Going into my third year of practice, I hear that, absolutely. And I remember this week, actually, Dean Jenkins, who has recently retired, she shared some fabulous advice to attorneys and was saying, you know, sometimes they're going to see things in you that you don't always see. And that's where, you know, you and I, and as well as everyone here on the panel, that we were, you know, really brought together for this purpose. And so sometimes you'll see things. So I agree with that, absolutely. I'd also like to, anything to add, Professor Carlson? Would you like to kick off again?
Yes.
Yeah.
I added this question because I think it's important for women to become involved in judiciary and district attorneys' work on the bench. What inspired each of you to run for office, and what was your biggest challenge? I know we'll start with Ava because you're a statewide.
I just did it again. You know, looking back, so for me, it was sitting in the courtroom and practicing in front of judges and thinking to myself, you know, I could do that, but I didn't know how do you make that happen as a first gen without the social capital and network that is sometimes necessary. But it goes back to finding mentors, and also for me it was, all right, I'm going to just take a bold risk and I'm going to pursue it. And so a judge passed away, and I'd gotten a few phone calls, and it was, Eva, you know, you're ready. Imposter syndrome, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But I took that chance and I interviewed, and it was the relationships that I was able to form. And then once I was on the trial bench, I knew that for me, kind of that path into judiciary, for me, I wanted it to include service on an appellate court. And so I pursued that as well. So I think once you decide you care about public service, you want to make that difference, then you have to engage your networks or find networks that will help you get there. It's very rare that anyone gets there alone. It's always this network of people who believe in you. And so I ran for Attorney General and lost, as some of you may know. But I took that bold risk because I saw a need and I thought that I was the person to fill that need.
Judge Chang.
I feel like I was lucky at the time because I also got a phone call, asked me if I'm interested. At that time, my first campaigns for district clerk. At that time, district clerk, the former district clerk has resigned and to run for another office. So and that had never happened before. So it takes all 59 district court judges to approve the new district clerk. So it's a path that nobody has taken before. And then I just decided to give a try. And I was division chief for the county attorney's office. So I do know some people in Harris County, but it was hard work, and I was lucky enough to get unanimously voted in as district clerk. But I lost the race that year in general election. So later on, when the judgeship came open, and I got another call, and then I decided to go all in. I think that, and I'm very glad that I took that bold step, because I feel like to be a judge, to bring justice in a timely fashion, it's my passion, and I was able to do it, and I feel like that's the best job in the world. But what if you want to run for office? I think just like Justice Guzman has said, you really need to build that network before you jump in. Network in the party that you want to run in, and also network in other people who will donate, contribute to make the campaign successful. And also during the campaign, you have to realize that you actually have two jobs. One job is in the morning job that make money for you, and the second job is at night. You have to go campaigning to meet people and to ask people for votes. So because it's so hard on the family members and also on yourself, and I always advise people who are interested in running that you really need to have heart-to-heart talk with your partner, with your family members, and with yourself. Once you decide to do that, just go all in.
All right, amen, sister. Nobody gets here alone, Justice Guzman, and public service is about serving others. I wanted to do that, and I wanted to do it through the law. I love the law. The law is designed to promote equity, fairness, safety. I had experience as a line prosecutor, and I saw a lot of things that I wanted to change, most of which were public safety related. And while the district attorney isn't a first responder, we are designated as the top law enforcement official because we are the go-between between police who make the arrest and do the investigation and the courts. And so I felt that this was a place that I had a skill set that uniquely qualified me for the job that I wanted to run for. But as a woman of a certain age, I saw and had been part of a lifetime of women not readily being accepted in politics, not being offered the top jobs by the big firms. Public service is where we went for work. And I felt like as a woman with a lot of public service background, that as district attorney, I would have the opportunity to help millions of people through changes in policy and by letting the public be aware of what the problems were so that they would be supportive of proposed solutions. And by being in the DA's office, if the proposed solution didn't work, we could scrap it and try another solution. And so my desire was to be part of the democracy. Our system of government is dependent on our participation. And that means to some people more than voting or going to jury service. To some people it means serving in their professional capacity. And because my father had done that, I knew that that was not a glamorous role, nor desirable to many people because of the scrutiny and, of course, the current political sort of scorched earth atmosphere that this country is in. And so it is not for the faint-hearted, but it is absolutely a shot at making things better for a lot of people, and that's priceless.
Excellent.
I'd like to add on to that. Is there anything that you wish you knew then when you first decided to run for office that you know now?
Yes. I'm currently on the witness stand. You only ask the question at the level, you only answer at the level asked. Yes, I wish that I had better understood as I'm beginning to the role of and the impact of how we control tax dollars, how they are spent, and how that can lift up a vision or move it off for another day. And so I was naive about the importance and impact of money in government. Of course, I saw it in the private sector, but I believe I was unaware of how much that impacts the public on a daily basis.
Anything else to add, Justice Guzman?
Well, there's a lot. I've been on the ballot 7 times, and this last time went from polling at 2% statewide to polling at 26% and having a real shot at making that runoff. And so it's just, you can't control everything. And so I think getting into a political arena, you have to go in knowing that even if you do everything right and put 150% of yourself into this process, you can't control, some outside influence factor, a lie, whatever it is. And so I think I know that now, and in a way that I'd never known all of those times that I ran for offices. You're not going to be able to control everything, and prepare yourself to respond quickly and as best as you can.
Thank you. For those considering opportunities in your respective practice areas, that could be corporate, in-house, public service, working in private practice, what guidance do you share with mentors or mentees, my apologies, or young lawyers coming into the fold about your respective practices, and then also if you can add anything that you haven't before about your journey to your practice? I can start with you, Regina, if you'd like.
Okay. I think the first thing that I think about is just that it's hard. And just listening to some of the panelists, none of us have really talked about how, it was easy. I just showed up and everything happened the way that I thought, because it doesn't. You have to work hard. You've got to really want it. My husband always used the terms to say you've got to be hungry. You have to recognize that you're not always the smartest one in the room, but no one ought to be able to outwork you. And there's not an answer that can't be found, and there's not a situation that you can't deal with if you don't put in the energy, the grit, the endurance, and build, kind of like we talked about, the network. Because it takes a village. I'm not personally responsible for my success. So you'll never hear me tell a story about how great I am, because I'm great because other people made me, they invested in me, and they gave me opportunities, et cetera. So building those relationships, I couldn't underscore that more, and hard work, and just don't give up. And recognize that your future is not gonna end up the way you planned it. But if you really work hard, like they say, shoot for the moon and you'll be amongst the stars.
Jackie, do you want to add anything to that, being in a litigation firm?
Oh, definitely. So I second everything she just said. But to add to that, as a young lawyer, I feel like it's important to step out of your comfort zone and take risks. For example, there's always going to be the partner sending out an email, can someone cover this mediation for me, a deposition, can anyone help me with discovery on this case? And sometimes, especially as young lawyers, we think, well, I've never done that before. I've never seen how it's done. But it takes actually stepping in and volunteering and saying, you know what, I'll cover those depositions. That's how I learned a lot of what I know in my career today. I was out for 1.5 years, and one of the partners at my prior firm had asked for help doing a massive personal injury case where a young woman lost a limb. And there were accident reconstructionists, surgeons, biomechanical experts, all kinds of expert depositions that I got to sit in and learn from. And there were about 10 other lawyers in the room. Everyone was much more experienced than me. And was I nervous when it was my turn to answer questions or ask questions? Definitely. But being able to sit there and learn from everyone else and just soak that experience in, that's something that young lawyers just step out of your comfort zone. Go ahead and take those risks.
And I would just add, working to exceed expectations. I worked with young lawyers, law clerks, over 20 years on the appellate bench and the Supreme Court of Texas. And my best law clerks were the law clerks that just went a little bit further. Here's the assignment. Judge, I found this. Judge, there's this case. Judge, this part of the record seems really interesting. What do you think? How does it influence, our thought process? And so I would say, always work to exceed expectations. And doing that, sometimes that gets you right at expectations. I can't tell you, you're going to be really, really busy, and there will be many, many demands on your time. But if you work to exceed expectations, you're always at least going to meet them. And you want to be there. You never want to be the one where folks say, I can't count on them. Right. So.
One of the things I noticed about all of your CVs is you all participate pretty heavily with nonprofits, volunteers, and with the bar. How important is that? I mean, people are trying to keep up. They've got a million things going on, families. Is it?
I'll answer that. Every lawyer in the Harris County District Attorney's Office is a member of the Houston Bar Association. And that's by design, as a matter of practice, that my administration introduced. I ask our lawyers to participate in one event, attend a committee meeting, go to a luncheon, run the run. I think that professional development is as integral to our lives as lawyers as spiritual development is to our lives as human beings. We need that. And every experience you have, whether it's in a case with experts or lay witnesses or just talking to other lawyers, it's all a learning experience. And this city and county is heavily relationship-based. As you develop relationships with people that you like and have similar values with, many times we do business with one another. Our families may know each other. I always say Houston is the biggest small town in America. And so because of that, we want our lawyers to be out talking to their future jurors, and they may be their future employers. I hope not, but that's the way district attorneys' offices go. We're a proving ground for young trial lawyers. It's a place to get experience, and many of us go on to other professions. A few of us come home later. So I would say the most valuable information I received as a mentor, it was all from older women, much of it my mother. Stay at a job a respectable amount of time. Your boss is always right unless they're asking you to do something that's absolutely wrong. Your word is your bond, etc. I think the old lessons about our character and how we deal with that as lawyers is as important as the skill sets we develop.
And I think if you're looking at a career in public service, whether it's in the judiciary or somewhere else, having a track record of actually having done something that serves someone's interests beside your own. So you don't have to, sign up for every nonprofit, but volunteer where it has meaning to you. And when you go interview for an appointment, whether it's by commissioner's court or the governor's appointments office, then you have a track record of actually caring about service to others. So it's important to take on meaningful interest, whether it's in the bar, through committees, but it's gonna be hard 10 years later to say, well, I really care about public service, that's why I want to be a judge, but oh yeah, I've never done anything. So.
Well, I think about the question, and I ask myself, why wouldn't you want to give back to the profession? It's what we make it. And we all know the challenges of, if nothing else, just say the profession's perfect, the perception's not. Mm-hmm. And we have to recognize that in order to continue to move our profession forward, to continue to have a diverse legal population and smart people, we've got to invest in helping to shape what our own future looks like. So some of it is nonprofit and giving back to the communities that we have all benefited from, and others is giving back to the profession that, quite frankly, provides the meals that we are eating on a regular basis, or the rent or whatever. But there's a reason we all work, quite frankly, and we owe it to the profession to help create what it needs to look like in the future.
In addition to giving back, I think I benefit from the involvement with the nonprofit organization. Because the leadership position I've held with the nonprofit organization, I think actually helped me to be a better division chief at the Harris County Attorney's Office, and also as a judge. Because it's actually harder to be the leader in a nonprofit organization world because everybody's volunteer. You don't have anything to hold them on, no job, no salary increase. So, but I think that experience, in addition to giving back, that was the original purpose, but I think you yourself also will benefit from that experience.
Yes, I volunteer with agencies that impact education and mentorship of young children in underserved communities, and that's very important to me. Similarly to Justice Guzman, I am a first-generation American. Not a lot of my family went to college. I'm one of the first to graduate from a four-year university, and being able to give back to the community and work with children who probably have never met an attorney. I know I never met an attorney growing up, and being able to be a presence in their lives that motivates them and encourages them, and that's how I choose to give back. It's so nice at the end of the day to know that I'm not just an attorney, I'm not just a mom, I'm not in a box, but I'm also able to give back to others and hopefully shape what the future will look like.
Excellent. We're all very proud of each of you.
I'd like to pull on that a bit, Jackie, about representation. So of course we're here, this is a panel, we're talking about not only the advancements of women in the legal profession, as well as in the South Texas family, but also in the lives that we touch as attorneys. Can each of you speak to the importance of representation as well as showing up in these spaces as sometimes being the only woman or being the only woman of color, being the person there that you may say, hey, you know, I see someone that looks like me, and how that has impacted you in your career, and how that continues to be influential in our practice. I'll give that to Justice Guzman if you'd like to start.
Sure.
Thank you.
For me, I've had a lot of firsts in my career. And what that's meant to me is that an opportunity to open the door for someone else to fill those positions, to have a seat at the table. And so it's really important also for the rule of law. Our communities have to see a justice system, in my view, that reflects the community. And so being able to mentor young students and being able to go out into the neighborhood where I grew up, and I remember when I got sworn in to the Texas Supreme Court, becoming the first Latina on the court, we went back to my old high school, and the governor's office asked me, where do you want to go? I want to go back there. Because I knew that for those students, they'd never met a lawyer. As you said, I had not. And so we went back, and a couple of years ago, in the middle of COVID, a young woman called, and she said, I was in the library that day, and I'm a lawyer now. Will you swear me in? And that moment, it does take sacrifice, and you have to set your priorities, but being able to connect and to touch the lives of someone else, for me, that's what being a person of color, it's opening doors. And letting other people know I'm going to be right there.
Judge Chang, if you can add.
I agree with everything that Justice Guzman has said. I think it's important for us to show up and to let people know that you also can do it. Because when they see you can do it, and I always tell them, you can do actually better than I do. You don't know when you said that, which life you have touched, and maybe somebody here in the audience, when they will become the U.S. Supreme Court Justice, just because what we talk about today. So I think it's important for every one of us to get involved in a panel like this, to speak up and to show up.
Let's go to a little more sensitive topic. We've all experienced some bias or discrimination based on gender or based on other factors. How has that affected you in your practice, and what advice do you see it changing? I guess I would say to that. And what can be done to make a more welcoming atmosphere for women in the law?
I'll start.
I was sitting here hoping you weren't going to call on me. So, when I think about really unconscious bias in particular, and I think about, too, just representation and the importance of diversity, I think about it from two perspectives. So one is, okay, as it relates to me. And secondly, as it relates to others. So first of all, as it relates to me, I've learned over my life that my reality is I'm going to show up looking like this. And people are going to have perceptions of me because of that. And so I have to recognize that that's my reality, okay? And unconscious bias is real. Because I've even seen it in myself sometimes, and I'll give a quick story of my neighbors, and I share this a lot because I met it's a lady and a man, and they were both talking about how they work for United. I automatically assumed that she was a stewardess or a flight attendant, the normal term. They were both pilots. Right there, I helped understand myself, hey, that was what unconscious bias looks like, and that's why it's called unconscious, first of all. So I think acknowledging the fact that there's a reality that when you show up, it's going to be there, and so how do I now navigate in that environment? And you were talking about, you know, whether it be imposter syndrome or whether it be just acknowledging the fact that we all have a role to play in doing something about it. And that's kind of the other part. Because we're all sitting in roles where we have no excuse for not doing something about it. Because I've been able to have opportunities because other people invested in me in spite of whatever my reality was. So I have to lean in now and do that for others. So I look at it as kind of responsibility, accountability, obligation. Nobility obligates. So it's looking for opportunities of how I can be better, how I can recognize that I have my own biases that show up. I like people that are like me, and so I want to hang around them. But I got to make myself uncomfortable, and I've got to lean into having a diverse team. The final thing I'll say is I work for Baker Hughes. It's an energy technology company, so we value innovation. Diverse teams come up with the most creative ideas and the most valuable outcomes. So why wouldn't you want that? So it's really kind of not what is the role that you play in the solution, but it's how can I really move the needle based on the position that now I sit today, and how can I expect to see diversity, equity, and inclusion, full stop, in every situation. But it starts with holding myself accountable for it and recognizing that my reality is what it is. So if someone shows up and they don't like me, it's okay. Somebody else will. But I'm going to deal with you under whatever framework we need to work within. So
That's a great perspective. Kim.
So as a member of the LGBTQ community, law enforcement is not warm and fuzzy in terms of a profession to be in. It's not full of women. It's not, until the last 25 years, been very diverse. And it, in terms of being in public office, women are treated differently. There is a double standard, it's obvious. In terms of lawyering, I think most of us graduated wanting to be good lawyers. And I wanted to be a good lawyer without a but behind my name. Because I graduated in the 80s, many of my colleagues were HIV positive and had AIDS. In fact, all died of it at a time when the government did nothing to stop it. There was no response. I saw discrimination from our government in that way. There were no hospitals for my friends. There were no care facilities we tried to band together. It gave me great motivation to ensure that laws were applied equally to everyone, and that as an example, I would be a good lawyer, not because I was gay, but certainly not as a counterbalance to that negative. So I really had a lot to prove to myself and to my community and to my family and to everyone I knew. And so I just tried to be a good lawyer, a good member of the law enforcement team, a good hard worker. And the world changed, but it didn't change by itself. It changed because a lot of people pushed for change. And that meant that we had to take risks, not just personally, but in our careers, to be who we were as people. And so I think that that experience is actually what best prepared me for politics, because once you've been personally transparent with everyone, then you're kind of used to the scrutiny that comes with public office.
Let me ask this follow-up. Do you think that women have to excel be exceptional because we are women in the profession. Do you think there's a double standard there?
Are we all going to collectively do that?
Well, I'll say it this way. So last night I listened to a female candidate for office, and she's Anglo. And so I thought she was impressive and strong and was just fabulous. So I said to her, wow, you're so impressive. She said, well, they've told me I sound angry. Now, do men get the I sound angry? So it's there. It comes in many forms. I mean, I was licensed in '89. I could tell stories, and I won't, but it's there, and it's still there. And so I would say we each have an obligation to call it out when we see it, and there is no right way to address it. So what worked for me, making my way through the judiciary and the law and that sort of thing, it may not work for someone else, and it's different now. The world has changed. So I think when it happens, don't be afraid to ask someone, if this happened to me, what would you do? What should I do? Get a couple of opinions and then address it in the way that works for you. But we can't pretend that, you know, these biases don't exist, and they do impact women more so than men, I believe.
I think the time I really felt I was discriminated against is when I was a chemical engineer, working in a team, actually it was an international team that all males. So I told myself at that time, and I'm still doing that today, is that regardless how other people treat me, I'm going to do my job, to the expert, to the perfectionist, and also I will be professionalism. So other people can be rude, and I'll be nice. So it does not deter me because that experience, I think it's hurtful afterwards, but it did not deter me and actually benefit me from being promoted later on in my company, just because of how I handled the situation. So I think you will see it in different form, especially me, because English is my second language. So, and I think I actually use it to my benefit, because when I was in the Harris County Attorney's Office, the opposing counsel always write me off. When they saw me, when they heard me talk, they write me off, so they probably prepared a case in a just ordinary course of business. But I will prepare the case just like a quiz in law school. So I find all the case laws on my side. So oftentimes I get the judge to rule for me because of that reason. So I think you use that actually to your benefit. Turn the table around.
You know, Brittny and I had that same conversation because when I started practicing law, the women were very underestimated.
Yeah.
And, you know, people called you little lady, and it was a, you know, I'm not little. But in any event, I just kind of went along with it until the summary judgment hearing, for example.
Right.
And said, gotcha. And then, of course, you become too aggressive. Angry.
And I think those biases, they follow us not only in our professional lives, but also in our personal lives. And so how if any of you are willing to share any experiences that you may have had outside of the profession? I mean, I think we carry ourselves, and we're, like you said, Regina, we're showing up all the time like this. This is what I look like. So if I go to the grocery store, if I go to a board meeting, if I go to a PTA conference, I'm showing up this way. And so we sometimes will battle those biases in those arenas as well. Jackie, if you don't mind sharing any of your experience in those situations as well.
Yeah, sure. Well, in the career, I often get confused as the court reporter. And in my personal life, I often get surprised looks whenever I'm at PTA meetings or at drop-off, When I tell them I work outside the home, and everyone always says, what do you do? And I say, oh, I'm an attorney. And people look at me like, what? I'm 4'11", and I don't look, fierce, but I am. So it's always a shock for people, and then I get a lot of follow-up questions, and sometimes I don't even like to talk about it, just because it turns into a whole story. But I feel like that's something that I encounter a lot, is people always are surprised that I'm an attorney, and I don't know if it's because I'm petite or I have a very bubbly personality. Not sure, but it's something I encounter every day.
One of the things that I hear from my students quite a bit is they want to have, when they take a job, work-life balance. And I said, I usually tell them, you can't have that till you're about 50 because you've got a lot of work to do. And if you end up having a family on top of it, you've got multiple jobs going on. What do you do for your own health and the health of your family? How do you find a balance? I don't think you can do, I'm going to work 50% of the time and I'm going to go to the spa the other 50% of the time. But you got to take some time for yourself.
Right. I'm in the thick of it. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so I'm still trying to navigate finding that balance. Some advice that I received whenever I was pregnant was, you're always going to feel like you're not doing enough in both areas. You're either not the best lawyer, but that day you were rocking it as a mom, or other days you worked late, your billable hours were amazing, but you weren't there to tuck your kids in at night. It's a give and take. There's always a tough balance to find, and I'm still trying to look for that balance. But even if it's something small, like meeting friends for dinner, volunteering is a big outlet of mine, feeling like I'm doing something beneficial for the community, working out, watching TV, just finding time to relax and unwind and detach yourself from the practice of law, because it could be very daunting. It's a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I wanted to dedicate myself to after having babies, is I wanted to continue being a full-time attorney and not give that up. I didn't want to give that part of myself up. And I've been able to navigate it, but it hasn't been easy. It hasn't come with sacrifices in both sides.
And that's the reality.
That's the reality.
That's an interesting question, because I want to be the one to let everyone know that there's no such thing as work-life balance. And what do I mean is, it's choices. Every day we have to make choices about, what am I going to do for work and what am I going to do for my life, because they're both equally important. Some days it could be 90% work, quite frankly. You just sleep enough so that you can make it through and you get to the next day. But I feel we all have to be accountable for making the right choices and recognizing that it's gives and takes in life. A lot of it for me is about partnership as well. I have an amazing partner, my husband, who happens to be here in that white shirt over there. And my point is that it's all about us having balance and rhythm. And it ebbs and flows. And you leverage opportunities to enjoy life when they present themselves. I think the one thing that I've learned in my career is it's about transparency. And as a female professional, it wasn't always easy to be transparent on your home life. Now, luckily, the dynamics have changed where everyone's more open on, I got to go to a soccer game, or I need to go pick up my kids from school. And I actually think COVID has helped a lot with that as well. But I do think it's about being transparent on, what are my challenges? What am I dealing with today? How am I showing up? So that my boss would always know, hey, I got this going on, and I'm going to need you to work with me on this. Or vice versa, if the company has something going on and they need me to work with them, I'm in. So for me, it's about making the right choices and being transparent with your family, as well as with your colleagues and your supervisors, so that everyone has a rhythm that's working. Then everyone wins. That's the position I take on it. But I don't think as an individual I'm ever going to have balance between the two, because I don't think it exists. If it may for some, just not in my world.
So I don't take the bifurcated approach. Mm-hmm. My job is my life. My life is involved in my job. And I said the word job but really what I meant is your life work. That's what a law degree is. It's a ticket to build a career of your own work for other people. And so I enjoy that. And I think my family knows that because they support me in it. And they don't always do it joyously. But they do because they care about me and I care about our work. And I look at it as our family's work because I didn't get elected without my family any more than the rest of us did. Our families carry us through. So Regina's right. Balance, I'm not sure. But sleep, you don't need it all the time.
I would just say don't be so hard on yourself. It's just not going to be perfect every day, most days. And be in the moment. So I remember being a young trial judge, and there was a case in front of me. They were complaining about how the one parent gave the child Pop-Tarts for breakfast. And all I kept thinking about this morning, we had Pop-Tarts, but it was in the car on the way to school because, there was no time for a sit-down breakfast. And so my daughter's now an attorney and finding out for herself about this work-life balance. But don't be so hard on yourself and be in the moment. Live for those beautiful moments, because looking back, the things that I can remember, if I want to think about soccer, oh yeah, I remember that one game and we were outside and the weather's perfect and Melanie is, 7 years old running with, so be in the moment and don't be so hard on yourself. And finally, it's going to be okay. I promise.
In closing, we continue to see the numbers for women entering law school to rise. At South Texas, for example, our fall 2022 entering class was roughly 55% of women, not to mention 45% diverse. Yet, according to the American Bar Association's Commission on Women in the Legal Profession, women only comprise about 37% of all lawyers nationwide. What can we do at South Texas and us as alumni and law students to help ensure that women who enter the legal profession remain in the legal profession and that we thrive? I would like to ask Judge Chang for that one.
I think all the encouragement that we can give to them, and we also can use the job, the responsibility that we have to help those fellow women attorneys. For example, we just talk about work-life balances. If we have, as a boss, if I have more passion about it, to give them more flexibility, and I think it certainly will help those fellow women attorneys to retain and to advance.
Jackie?
Events like this, organizations like the Women's Legal Society at South Texas College of Law Houston, that put an event together like this where you can hear firsthand from people that have been doing it through different decades. I think that's very important to have that personal encouragement and mentorship.
And any closing words?
So I want to thank what used to be called Women's Legal Forum. This is how I met my partner here at this law school. And then we had a child 15 years later. She had him. And so it's absolutely true what you're saying about the ability of South Texas, I think, to empower women to have not just a job, but to open up the ability to have a lifetime of work that's meaningful to us, and to have really important personal relationships with some of the people that we meet. I know it happened here. I remain involved with the school and the alumni because I believe this school turns out good lawyers that are an asset to the city, the county, the state, the nation, the world. I really believe that. And so I think it's participation in these events and encouraging each other, especially as women, to carry on the fight, live in the moment, and support each other. And supporting each other when we have a school in common that gave us all our shot is just a great way to do it. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add?
One thing that sits with me is just the one statement that says, be the change that you want to see in the world. So if we want to really have an impact on diversity, equity, and inclusion, that includes everyone. And we have to drive it ourselves. So it starts with us. So it's about what are you going to do to make a change in the places where it needs to happen.
And I would say take bold risk. Just do it. Challenge yourself, take the risk. Bold risk, bold rewards.
Well, thanks to each of you for participating today. You're phenomenal women and friends. And we are so happy you're part of the South Texas family and thankful that you would give back to us. Thanks for South Texas.
Yes, thanks for South Texas.